Hello everyone, I'm Eternal Flame here, and welcome to ranking all the Invincible villains from most to least evil. Now I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys at the start of this, I completely robbed this idea from my friend Satori. Go check out his video, he did one for a One Punch Man version, but I decided, hey, let's do one for Invincible and all the TV show villains. Now it should be remembered, I'm not ranking these characters from the most to least powerful, I'm just ranking them based on who is the most to least evil, and I'm only going to stick by the TV show villains for Invincible. Now there's not going to be a hard ranking to this, but the main way that I'm going to be ranking this is going to primarily be based on intention rather than being based on the actual actions that are done. Mainly because, at least in my case, I do feel intention matters quite a bit more than the actual actions itself done until we get to really deep actions. This is meant to be a moral debate thing, but this is just my opinion. Maybe you guys have a different opinion and maybe you think the actions matter much more than the actual intention behind it, and that's going to probably change your own ranking. And finally, this is going to be the most important thing, I'm only going to be ranking them during their time as an actual villain. For example, I'm not going to be ranking Omni-Man based on Season 2, only Season 1, because once Season 2 occurs, I think he's no longer considered a villain, but only until the end of Season 1 is he considered a villain. Finally, and this is the most important thing, I am mainly sticking to the TV show. Some of these characters are going to do significantly more evil things than they already have shown in the later seasons, but I don't want to spoil, so I'm mainly going to stick to the TV shows with this one. And I'm mainly just going to go by a bunch of tiers. So without further ado, let's get straight into this. And we're going to start out with the not evil tier, mainly because I only have one villain who I put in the not evil tier, that being Titan. I don't think I need to explain Titan too much. He manipulated Invincible for the sake of trying to become the head of his city's mafia, so he can make the mafia better for his own family, which he did technically do an evil action, and he put Invincible in the hospital, which is why he's still here, but at the same time he made his city better, so I kinda have to rank him on the list, but he's gonna be the only character who I put in the not evil tier. Furthermore, he also just has good actions as well, like when he was robbing that place for that chip of technology, he could have easily killed the guards, but instead he gave them the choice on whether they died or lived. Something he really didn't have to do, but he ended up doing anyways. So I gotta put him at the not evil tier for that. Man understood minimum wage and told them that minimum wage wasn't worth their lives. But now that we got that tier out the way, I'd like to move on to the next tier, which I like to call the misguided and instincts tier, which is effectively all the characters who are just misguided or animalistic. Basically, they don't really have evil intent behind their actions, but they were guided on the wrong path. Mainly because they do think they're doing a good thing in mind, and they don't have enough evidence to prove that this isn't a good thing yet. The first person I have in this tier is Darkwing 2, mainly because Darkwing 2 at the time he was a villain was attacking Invincible, mainly because he thought that he would end up becoming another Omni-Man. He was also just being brutal to criminals, but he was ultimately doing all of this for a good reason, to protect the Earth. And Darkwing 2's biggest sin is trying to kill Mark, so I don't consider that too big of a thing on this tier list, keyword being specifically on this tier list. He was definitely a character who I would consider more misguided than anything, especially showing how easy it was for him to turn good. He clearly had amazing intentions, it was just he was kind of doing it the wrong way. If I'm being honest, I was tempted to move him into the not evil tier, but I don't think he fits that tier yet with Titan, mainly because Titan was just doing everything with good intention. And his actual intention was the right way to do things, while Darkwing 2's wasn't. Basically, Titan wasn't really misguided and he was completely right, in comparison to Darkwing 2 who was completely misguided. Up next is going to be the monster on this list, the Hail Mary. Now, I don't consider the Hail Mary evil at all, it is mainly just a monster. We don't know too much about it, but it's pretty clear that it doesn't do things with malicious intent in mind. In fact, the only time where it really did anything with intention in mind was out of anger towards Omni-Man directly. I basically consider the Hail Mary to just be a wild animal, so yeah, that's kind of why I'm just putting them there. Cause like if you were beaten up by this random person with a mustache that could fly, you'd be angry at them too. But nothing implied that it had a higher intelligence, so I can't really put it any more than this tier. Because at least in my opinion, it doesn't really seem to have intention behind its actions. Now up next in this tier is going to be a lot of characters that are going to be placed for the same reason, that being a lot of Viltrumite characters. Which, to list them shortly, I have Anissa, Omni-Man, Lucan, Vidor, Fula, and General Craig, as well as the two Viltrumite executioners in that order, with the one I have at the least evil of them being Anissa. Now I'm really trying my best to avoid comic spoilers as much as I can, and I know if we were to include the comics, then one of these characters would go up much higher on this tier list, but please do not spoil as we have some TV show onlys. And if you read the comics, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but because I don't want to spoil it, they would go higher normally, it's just we are only talking about the TV show right now. Now the reason why I have Anissa at the bottom of the Viltrumites for the least evil is mainly because they were the best in their approach to Mark, at least in my opinion. They tried to use logic constantly with Mark, they tried to show that she would be able to help Mark, and she saved quite a bit of lives as well. It was only at the end when Mark was trying to be defiant that he ended up resisting, and even then, Anissa didn't kill him. And the main thing with Anissa, and the reason why I'm putting her alongside all of the other Viltrumites in this tier, is because they are completely misguided by the way of the Viltrum Empire. They believe that it would be better for the planets for them to follow in Viltrum's rule. It's not like they're doing this out of some evil intention. They are purely doing this for the rule of the Viltrumite Empire. Omniman is going to be in a similar boat of reasoning to Anissa. However, the reason why I have Omniman a little bit higher is purely because of some of the things he did say, like the entire "what's another 17 more years" line, as well as calling Debbie a pet. That's what's going to put him a bit higher. Furthermore, he also ended up killing all of his friends that he made of the Guardians of the Globe too, and he killed the Immortal twice. And Omniman has just conquered more planets in the past as well. Up next is the 3 Viltrumites who were sent down in order to capture Omniman. We don't really know that much about them, but the main reason why I'm putting them higher than Omniman is because they were just quite a bit more sadistic in the way they were treating things, especially Fula. Now up next is General Krieg, who I'm putting higher purely because he is a higher rank in the Viltrumite Empire in comparison to everybody else. He is a general, he is much more involved with it, so I kinda have to put him higher into Misguided. I was honestly tempted to put him into a higher tier, but we really don't know enough about General Krieg for me to put him in that higher tier. And up next I have Viltrumite Executioner 1 and 2, which honestly I could put lower than General Krieg, but at the same time they're also up here for the sadism that they show, but they also just seem to be a little bit more mocking to Nolan, at least in my opinion, but at the same time that could just be some disrespect towards him, I'm not too sure. But if you wanted to swap those rankings around, you can. And the final 3 people who I'm going to put in this tier is going to be Mask Vincible, Mustache Vincible, and Viltrum Vincible. Now I'm putting Mustache Vincible in here because we don't really know that much about him, but I just think that he falls under the same trap as the other Viltrumites, so I'm just going off of appearances. Up next is Viltrum Vincible, and the reason why I'm putting him up here is mainly speculation. Now we don't know that much about his backstory, but judging by his demeanor and the fact he is clearly not enjoying what he is doing and just doing it for the sake of the job, I feel like he was brainwashed. Now this is fully just me going speculation. We do not know anything about him, like I said. But I do speculate that he was just forced into fighting for the Viltrumite Empire and just gave up trying to resist against them. Which also seems to be the common speculation that this was a mark forced into the Viltrumite Empire and forcefully brainwashed, but at the same time we don't really know for sure, so there is definitely potential he could be higher. Maybe he just doesn't show his enjoyment, we don't really know. Maybe he's just stone-faced, maybe he's not, we have no idea, but this is just going to be some instinct speculation and I thought that would be fun to include. Especially because so many of the Mark variants didn't really get any screen time at all and didn't get any speaking lines, so I thought, hey, might as well include some. And finally, Mask Vincible. The reason why Mask Vincible is here is mainly because of how he carries himself. We don't really know that much about him other than the fact that he misses his mom, and the fact that he enjoyed spending time with his dad. We also know, at least judging by how he speaks, that he probably wasn't the one to kill Debbie in his timeline. He might have been, we don't really know. His sentence is really weird of not all of us killed mom. And his entire goal is literally just doing this so he can bring his mom back with him. So for me, I'm going to put him in the misguided tier, where he just wants his mom back. But at the same time, if you really wanted to put him in the not-evil tier, I can see an argument for it. It's why I put him at the top of misguided. Now up next, I have the kinda evil tier, which these are people who don't exactly see joy in their action, but they're willing to take it, for the main reason of selfishness. And there are people who are so deep into their actions that I can't really call them misguided anymore. Now up first, a character who just barely managed to miss the misguided tier is going to be Doc Seismic. The main reason Doc Seismic is here is because of how his bracelets work, where his bracelets ended up giving him a super heavy concussion. These ended up giving him heavy brain issues and is kind of the reason why he is evil, which that is a good motivation for why he's evil, but at the same time, while that is a good motivation and understandable for why he'd be put in misguided, he also kidnapped every single hero on Earth and was fully planning to just make the world be completely destroyed and all of humanity be destroyed to return it back to nature, so I can't really accept wanting to cause a global genocide. Like, I know his brain was screwed around with, but at the same time, I can't really accept someone who wants to do omnicide as his motivation to just let that slide. Though he does also have a motivation that is on the debatably better side, mainly because he just thinks Earth would be better without humans, which, I'm gonna be honest, I kinda get seeing how humans are in the current day and age, but that's beside the point. So wanting to cause omnicide is just enough to move him into the kinda evil tier. If I'm being honest, I can also see arguments for moving him up a tier or moving him down a tier. It really depends on what you value more. Do you value more his brain condition or just his actions and being like, no, he wants to cause omnicide, we kinda have to move him up to the full evil tier. This man is a madman. It's up to you. I'm gonna leave that one up to you. Now up next, and I can see very heavy arguments for him being placed down a tier, is going to be Powerplex. Now the main reason why I put Powerplex in this tier is because he's too dumb for me to consider him misguided. Like, basically, for me at least, there has to be some level of evil within Powerplex to not see what is wrong with his actions. Because, like, the Viltrumite Empire, it's pretty easy to see their success. It's easy to see that they are kinda working on planets, they are making them better, so I can get why they are brainwashed. Powerplex is just dumb. Like, if it was just he blamed Invincible and hadn't had any context at all for the fight and just saw, hey, Invincible was fighting Omni-Man and his niece died, yeah, I can understand that. My issue comes in the fact that he works with the GDA and sees the fight because they have recordings of it. We know they have recordings of it. He sees what happened. He sees Invincible as a victim and he still blames him for it. Like, I know he's blinded by revenge, but at the same time, there's only so far I'm willing to accept with Misguided in this case, and I just can't put him in Misguided. Maybe you guys can, maybe you guys think he is fully misguided, but for me, he's just too dumb to be considered misguided. Either too dumb or too evil, because there has to be some evil part of him that wants to blame it on Invincible, and that makes him selfish, which is why I put him in the kinda evil tier. Because I don't think he fully believes he's doing this for the right purpose. I think he is doing this with grief and is trying to hurt somebody else as a result of that grief, which kinda just leads to me having to put him in this tier instead. He doesn't think he's working towards a better goal, he just wants to hurt Invincible and is pretending he is, and that's why I put him in kinda evil. Oh, and also the seal of the cake, at least for me, is the fact that he was willing to let his wife convince him to tie up the baby and bring them up as a hostage negotiation when they see how destructive Powerplex's powers are. Like, that goes beyond Misguided. Why are you bringing up your son? Now, up next, I'm going to have two characters, that being the Tether Tyrant as well as the Magmaniac. Now, the main reason why they are going to be at the bottom of kinda evil tier right above Powerplex and Doc Seismic, and if I'm being honest, I might actually rank them below even those two, is mainly because we see why they are doing this. The reason why they're being evil and doing evil actions is because this is their only option left in life. And we even see they have some principles. When they're doing a bank robbery, they try and make sure the kid is not worried. They have some principles to them. However, the reason why I'm putting them in the kinda evil tier is because they are still ultimately working to kill people for their own gain and benefits, so I do think that is kinda evil. Especially since the people they fight are often heroes, they aren't really villains, so yeah. Now up next, I have 5 people at once, which those 5 people at once are going to be the 2 members of the Lizard League that is not the big guy who, like, bit off Rexplode's hand, which I think is Komodo Dragon, I don't fully remember. If you remember the names of the Lizard League people, why are you the way you are? Furnace, Kursk, and finally Battle Beast. These guys are basically goons to villains other than Battle Beast, who Battle Beast is just fighting people for fun. He doesn't really have any evil intention behind it, but at the same time, the level of brutality that he treats fights with is why I have to put him in kinda evil, because even though he doesn't really have evil intention behind his actions, with how much he brutalized characters, especially sending Mark to the hospital the way he did, as well as all of the other characters, I kinda have to put him in the kinda evil tier, because man enjoyed brutalizing them way too much. The others are just random goons who enjoy doing what they did, and they just had a lot of fun with it, which is why I kinda have to put him in that tier. The others are kind of just goons that are working for evil purposes, and yeah, considering they're willing to do evil things for the job, I kinda have to put them that high. And they don't really have the same act of forgiveness that like Magmaniac as well as Tether Tyrant have, where we don't really see their backstory, so all we can really assume is they're doing it for their own gain. Now in the same tier as well is going to be that character who Cecil fought against in the past, the person who wanted to like wipe out all of humanity on the planet and was responsible for him losing all of his skin. Basically that person, I genuinely forgot what her name was. She has effectively the same goal as DA Sinclair, but she doesn't have the benefit going for her of a device that screws with her mind. She just kind of wants to do it and see this as the right thing to do, and this is so much depth that I can't really see it as enough to be put in the misguided tier. But at the same time, she never does succeed in that goal. Now, the reason why I'm not going to move her up higher is primarily because I genuinely forgot about her, and I'd be surprised if anyone did remember her. Like, I don't even remember what her name is, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Now, up next, we have the real meat and potatoes, what I like to call the evil tier. These characters are definitively evil, they are malicious, they don't really care about other people, and they just only care about themselves. Starting off with the first person evil tier, I'm going to have Multipole. Now, Multipole hasn't done that many actions on screen. He was an assassin working for Mr. Liu, but one of the big things that I'm putting him on this screen for is both him taunting Invincible and going out of his way to do that, but more importantly, him deciding to try and murder Rex, even though Rex told him outright he didn't kill Kate, he tried to save them, yet he still tries to kill them anyways. And then he literally says he has killed people for less after that, even though he was proven wrong, which, yeah. Multipole definitely deserves to be put in the evil tier. He is not just kinda evil, man is a murderer. Man's a psychopath, and I don't want to hear otherwise. The only reason he's not going to go higher up into this is because he doesn't really have that much ambition. He sort of does what he wants. Now up next is the Flaxen Leader. We don't really know too much about him other than the fact that he did try and conquer Earth, but the fact that he is a planet conqueror is enough to at least put him in the evil tier for me. We don't really know the reason why he did that, considering he wanted to go to an entirely different dimension. So yeah, at least for me, we don't know enough to say that he could be lower. We don't know his reasoning, but he looks to be rather malicious, especially with how they went out of their way to try and torture Mark in their final moments. Now, of course, yes, they might end up getting more information about them, and we will know they are going to get that, mainly because they have had a teaser for them to get their own plot point, but that hasn't happened yet, so we don't know enough about them. They could be higher on this list. Or, well, they could be if they were still alive. I say that like Omniman didn't use him as a way to just go through an entire city and slam him through, like, multiple buildings. Now up next in this same tier, I have Kill Cannon. Now the main reason why I'm going to put Kill Cannon up this high, even though he really didn't do that many actions that were evil, man was moving with a malicious energy and just had that maliciousness. He was happy to kill a child when he was going to fight Adam Eve as a kid. He was fully willing and happy to do that. When Adam Eve tried to save a car with a bunch of civilians inside of it, he went out of his way to stomp on her hand to force her to let go. Even though that legit doesn't have any tactical advantage for him, he could have just let her like lower it fully down and then just fired on them, but no. Man chose to go out of his way to make sure the civilians died, and Adam Eve knew it was her fault before stomping on her head several times and about to kill her. Now yes, Adam Eve did instigate that one, I will admit that, but he was still moving with malicious energy. Like, I'll be honest, the only reason why I don't think he's more of a threat to the world is not because of a lack of trying, but a lack of not having the tools. Man would be pure evil and on some menace energy if he had the tools. Lucky for the world, his one trick is that his arm is a gun. But that's why he goes above the kinda evil tier, because he actually has enjoyment in what he does. Though, honestly, Flaxen Leader might actually be above him right now, just by actions, so yeah. Up next is going to be both a double spot between both Mr. Liu and Machine Head. They are both massive overlords of crime. Machine Head in particular is rather cruel to Titan when it comes down to it. He somehow managed to get a deal with Battle Beast, which I still have no idea how he managed to do that. I'm really hoping the new comic they end up explaining that. But yeah, I think Machine Head is definitely one of the more evil people. This man would set up the city he is in to burn so long as it meant advancing his own position. He cares about himself above all else, and that is why he's now ruling the Order as the #1, not to mention Mr. Liu, someone who was going to make the city even worse than Machine Head if Titan didn't go along with the schemes and plans that Mr. Liu had in mind. Both of these people are willing to ruin and make the lives of the city folk much worse, depending on if it satisfies their actions and needs. And they clearly like doing it. And some of you guys might be thinking, shouldn't the Flaxen Leader be higher than them? I'm gonna be honest. If they had the technology and capability to take over another planet, I think they would. So that's more of a tool issue rather than them being evil enough to do it. I genuinely think they would do it if they had the capability to do it, and that's why they haven't. They are power-hungry megalomaniacs. Now up next, I'm going to have a double spot between King Lizard as well as Komodo Dragon. Now King Lizard led the attack on the nuclear facility, and he was going to do this and basically threaten the world with nuclear bombs if they didn't meet his demands. Not to mention he shot Rex in the head, so yeah, this man definitely belongs up here. But you might be wondering, why is Komodo Dragon above King Lizard? And let me just say this now, that thing, that demon, that absolute abomination of a creature that still gives me nightmares, definitely belongs a spot higher, and if I'm being honest, I might put him a tier higher. Because not just was this man savagely tearing apart several of the duplicate clones on some full-on what the gorilla believers believe what 100 humans versus a gorilla would be like, so bad that I can't even actually show the video on screen, but more importantly, he went out of his way to catch Shrinking Ray and then eat her when she was small. And then when Shrinking Ray tried to grow, he forced it back down, showing why the Ant-Man strategy wouldn't work on someone that much stronger, because it doesn't matter how much you grow, you just get compacted down in the body. And then he said yum. Man unironically said yum about eating another person. What are you? What is this demon? And then most of all, he ate Rexplode's hand right after. Now granted, that was how Rexplode took him out, but he still ate the hand. Like, why are you on this Sukuna type of energy? Why? You don't need to eat him. No. But okay, moving on from this, let's move on to the next and final 3 people that I have in this tier before we move up. And those people are going to be Veil Invincible, Omnivincible, and Mohawk Mark. They are sadistic braggers who absolutely love what they're doing, who Invincible just loves taking so many people on. Mohawk Mark was the one to immediately suggest torturing Angstrom, mainly because if they killed him, they would be stuck there. He was playing with Mark the entire time, and Omnimark at the same time was also in a similar ballpark where he was trying to guide Mark and turn him into basically another him. But the main big reason why I'm putting all these guys in the evil tier and this high up is because the entire reason why they're doing this is to conquer more worlds. That was what they agreed to conquer more dimensions with Angstrom Levy. But now we're going to move up a tier. In their own tier, I have the businessmen. As they said themselves, we're more than evil geniuses now, we're businessmen. We got the Mahler twins. I don't think I need to say more than that. They're funny, they're great, they're just the businessmen. So let's move on up to the next tier. Up next in the next tier, I have killed them right now. These people are menaces to society that do war crimes for fun and need death. Starting out this tier, I have D.A. Sinclair. And while D.A. Sinclair didn't do that much on screen because he was dealt with really early on, this was the same guy who kidnapped a bunch of college students and modified their bodies to make them superhuman against their will, including removing their emotional part of their brain so they couldn't fight back against it. Once one of the reanimated were free from their control, the first thing they did was take their own life. Now, if it was just that, I wouldn't put him this high, but it's because of one other thing that he does during these experimentations that really put him this high for me. He keeps them awake and doesn't give them any anesthesia at all for when he does this to them. Keep in mind, he is sawing off parts of their body, but he doesn't suppress the pain or anything like that. He just does it to these people. Which gets even worse when we have the knowledge that he can do this to dead people, so he doesn't even need to keep them alive thanks to the GDA. But no, he makes them still have to feel all of this pain. Now sure, yes, his goal was to advance humanity, but this was clearly unwillingly. He doesn't care what humanity wants, he just did this because he could. Now I do get keeping this man alive to have a better chance against Viltrumites. I do the exact same thing in Cecil's position, but this man needs to die. As soon as we get the chance to make him replaceable, replace him, kill him. He is just messed up, and I think he needs to die. Now up next is Goggles Invincible, and you might be thinking, shouldn't Goggles Invincible just be in a tier lower with all the other Invincible variants? No, this man was on some energy back when he attacked the Teen Team. Because his entire line of, I know you well enough to hear a little bit of fear in your voice, is terrifying. He had this calmness to him that made him feel like a serial killer. Like he was enjoying each and every second of this, but at the same time, he just wasn't showing it publicly, but he just had this quiet enjoyment to him, and that's honestly more terrifying than someone just being so energetic about it. But a quiet enjoyment that you can feel, but just not show on his expression is so terrifying. He has the same thing going for him as the other Invincible variants too, of just joining in so he could conquer more worlds, but on top of that, he has that serial killer vibe to him, and that's why I'm putting him a tier higher, purely because of that vibe. Because none of the previous Invincible variants show that same level of serial killer enjoyment and toying with his foes. Now there are a couple more Invincible variants that I'm going to talk about later, but that's going to go a little bit later in the list. Up next, I have the Sequids. Not just did the Sequids want to take over the planet, they wanted to take over the mind of everyone and make them into basically their hive minds. And the more big thing for me is the fact that even though they were enslaved by the Martians, they decided, nah, we're going to enslave a planet. They don't want freedom, they don't want to live in their own society, they want to enslave people despite being slaved! Now I get they need a hive mind for power, I get that, and they could have taken 1 or 2 humans for that, as messed up as that sounds, but no, they want to take over the world and make that their hive mind. Take over their consciousness and their lives and make them theirs. They need to die. I understand why the Martians treat them the way they did. They need death. Now up next we have the Future Immortal. And the Future Immortal is one of the most selfish characters that I've seen in a long while. Man decided to screw over the entire Earth in hopes of getting the future version of Invincible to come down here and kill him. He really decided, I want to die and I'm going to make that everybody else's problem because I don't want to die a coward's death of jumping into the sun. And he ruined so many lives through that, and that's why I have to put him up here. And what makes it even worse is he didn't even try looking. He didn't try abandoning the planet. He just decided, I'm making this everyone else's problem until you come and finish me off. Like, what? He had been doing this for so long that the world forgot who Invincible was. That was how long he had been deciding to make this the world's problem. That's why he belongs up here in this tier. All because King Immortal went, wah, I want to die, wah. But yeah, if you can't tell, King Immortal belongs in this tier. Man decided to screw over several generations just so we could get finished off by a stronger opponent. But now up next, I'm going to put No Goggles Invincible. Though the more I think about it, if I'm being completely honest, I feel like King Immortal should be above No Goggles Invincible. Now the main reason why I'm putting No Goggles Invincible this high up is purely because of him mocking his opponents the entire fight, and the fact that he went out of his way to toy with the Immortal for 12 hours straight. Also, his entire mockery of the entire team is just great. Not to mention his actual excitement to kill the Guardians of the Globe because he couldn't do it last time since his dad did it. Man is just a complete and absolute menace. And the final character that I'm going to put on here is going to be Prisoner Mark. Now, we don't know that much about Prisoner Mark, but if I'm being honest, I'm kind of terrified of him because he looks like he's been through some crap. Now, of course, if you want to put him lower because we don't know much about him, I understand that, but he's one of the surviving Invincibles. Man is just a pure demon on smoke timing, so yeah. But now, without further ado, we're going to move up to the final tier, which I like to call this final tier pretty simple. Put them on a list. This final tier of people are people that are pure and absolute evil, and I would not want to be in the same room of them. I fear these people, and I hope they die. Now, up first, in this tier of people, I have Stripevincible, who I consider the second most evil Invincible variant. Now, I know on screen he hasn't done anything and should have the same level of evilness as all the other Invincible variants, but there's one difference with Stripevincible that comes in comparison to all of the others, which we don't have this confirmed for. Stripevincible has slaves. Man has an entire, slave empire of strong people, because one of the heroes he knocked out when he was attacking, he said was so weak he wouldn't even keep them as a slave of his empire. This man has slaves, something that we currently cannot confirm for any of the other Invincible variants. He was sent here also for the same reason of conquering another planet. Hell, he's even the one who actually calls it out, and the reason why they all agreed to work with Angstrom Levy was to conquer a bunch of other dimensions. I am so happy Angstrom sent him away. One of the only good things Angstrom actually did in his life was send this thing, this abomination of a creature feature, into another dimension to starve. Now, he doesn't have too much to talk about. I've already talked about why the other Viltrumite variants will be up high, and we just have that little bit of context added on, which is the fact he has slaves. So yeah, that's why I put him up this high. Up next is going to be Angstrom Levy himself. Now, Angstrom Levy falls into a similar group that Powerplex does, where while I do get that he was partially misguided because of what happened to him and his experiment, he's a weird combination of Doc Seismic and Powerplex, but at the same time, this is one of the cases where both the actions kind of completely overwhelm the intent, but more importantly, Angstrom is a bit too stable, at least in my opinion, for him to fully be excused through intent. He consciously knows what he's doing. He's aware of the fact that this is the one good Invincible universe. At least I think he is, judging by how he acts. And he's, more importantly, willing to side with all the Invincibles that made his life hell just to screw over this Invincible as well. All because he was disfigured by that Invincible. Which, reminder, Angstrom Levy is responsible for the death of hundreds of thousands. Man is pure evil, man is a liar, and man brought all the evil marks here. Yeah, no, this man is pure and absolute evil. Sure, at the start he might have had a good intention, but this is just pure evil and pure pettiness. He belongs up here for all he has caused. And he is willing to pay any price so long as it means getting his revenge. This man is on a list. He needs to die. Light, write his name in the death note. Angstrom Levy is definitely up there as one of the more evil ones, but we still have one more person we consider a bit more evil to go up there, that being Sinister Mark. Now, if I'm being honest, you could very easily argue Angstrom should be above Sinister Mark, but in my opinion, I do put Sinister Mark a bit above, mainly because of one reason, which is the flashback we see with Angstrom, and it's actually how we treated Angstrom and his son. It is pretty clear Sinister Mark likes to toy around with his opponents and enjoys the hunt. Man isn't doing this for efficiency, which, speaking of, he also took over the planet after killing Omniman. Now, we don't know what the circumstance is or how that happened. All we know is he did kill Omniman. He He's the one to threaten to kill Angstrom Levy, and was also doing this to take over more dimensions. There was a reason why this man was called Sinister Mark. He just had that sinister aura. But like I said before, I could very easily see an argument to put Angstrom and maybe even Stripe Invincible ironically above Sinister Invincible. But in my opinion, I think this is the order where they would go. And up above all of them is going to be the real big evil person that we have introduced to us so far. The most evil character, at least in my opinion, that being Conquest. Or, well, he is the second most evil. We're gonna get into the most evil of them later. Now, I know you might pull up the argument that Conquest should be placed with the other Viltrumites. He was brainwashed for their way. However, in my opinion, I do think Conquest is a little bit different, especially shown in the way he speaks and talks. Like, literally, one of the first things he says to Mark, he isn't going to try and convince Mark to join their empire. He isn't going to try and convince Mark to join up with the Viltrum Empire or spread the greatness of it. Man wants hands. Conquest is there for violence. He is there to enjoy himself and get as much out of whatever his target is in order to have fun. That was why throughout the entire battle he was constantly trying to motivate Invincible to keep going and getting stronger so he could have more fun with Invincible. He loves his job, and that's how he sees enjoyment. Man also was willing to rip Oliver in half and was going to eat his heart. Which let's not even begin to get into the fact that that straight up implies that Conquest is most definitely a cannibal, but that's beside the point. He was willing to end all the lives he could just for fun. Not to mention the fact that he by far and away takes over the most amount of planets, and it just sends whenever people are being rebellious. Conquest is evil. He is a sadist and an absolute menace to society. And one that I'm very happy that Mark almost put down, and very mad that Cecil decided to keep alive inside of a box. However, he's not the most evil. Let's go over our number one, the real most evil character in all of Invincible. Adam Eve's dad. Man is the worst. He is an absolute evil dad and just, like, sucks. He sucks so terribly that I don't even know how to begin describing his actions. Like, man is one of the worst parents I have ever seen in a long time in fiction. He just sucks. Like, he's on that Shao Tucker levels of being a bad parent. But yeah, that's my list of where I rank all the Invincible characters from most to least evil. That's my opinion, but I'm kind of curious what you guys think. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe y'all have different opinions. Anyways, I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace out.